tagadam.
Dit tagadene tagadam.
Dit tagadene tagadam.
Tagadune tagadam.
Tagadene tagadam.
Junu tagadam.
Junu tagadam.
In the vast world of music, few artists have transcended boundaries as effortlessly as Zakir Hussain, the Indian tabla virtuoso whose rhythm has become synonymous with innovation, tradition, and cross-cultural fusion. A name that resonates deeply not only in the corridors of Indian classical music, but also in jazz clubs, concert halls, and global music festivals. Zakir Hussain is not just a musician, he is a cultural bridge. His work has reshaped the landscape of world music, linking the ancient sounds of India with the rich traditions of the West. And in doing so, he has become a symbol of the power of music to unify diverse worlds. But what truly sets Zakir apart is not just his unmatched technical mastery over the tabla, but the deep emotional resonance he brings to each performance. It's this rare blend of virtuosity and emotion that has earned him a place among the greats of music. In Zakir's hands, the tabla becomes an instrument of conversation, a vehicle for telling stories, expressing emotions, and building connections. His tabla playing is not merely technical, it's deeply personal, speaking in a language that's felt as much as it is heard. Born on March 9, 1951 in Mumbai, Zakir Hussain's musical destiny was sealed before he could even walk. His father, Ustad Alla Rakha, was one of India's most renowned tabla maestros. From a very early age, Zakir was exposed to the rhythms that would become the soundtrack of his life. His father's influence was profound, and the tiny hands of the young Zakir often mimicked the intricate beats he would hear during his father's rehearsals. But while the tabla was Zakir's inheritance, his mastery of the instrument was anything but inevitable. It was a product of extraordinary discipline, an unyielding work ethic, and a passion for exploring new musical horizons. Zakir began his formal training at the tender age of 7, under the tutelage of his father. At first, his lessons were centered on mastering the traditional rhythms of Indian classical music, tabla's intricate tabla bowls, or syllables, the foundation of the music. His early exposure to this rich legacy would shape his understanding of rhythm for the rest of his life. Yet, even as a child, Zakir was known for his remarkable ability to push the boundaries of what was considered traditional, displaying an innovative approach to the tabla that would later become his signature style. The tabla, with its rich history in Hindustani classical music, had always been a symbol of India's cultural heritage. But Zakir would soon make it a global voice, an instrument that could speak to people across the world, irrespective of language, religion, or background. Zakir's musical journey truly began in his teenage years when he started performing with his father. His early performances earned him accolades and admiration, not only from the Indian classical music community, but also from the wider world. The mastery of rhythm Zakir exhibited in these performances quickly marked him as a prodigy, capable of bending the very rules of tabla to create something entirely new. What truly made Zakir Hussain's playing stand apart was not just his technical skill, but the depth of emotion he infused into every note he struck. The tabla, traditionally seen as an accompaniment to other instruments in classical music, was transformed in Zakir's hands. He made it a solo voice, capable of carrying a melody of its own. His playing was fluid, yet incredibly precise. Every beat was imbued with an emotional nuance that made each performance seem uniquely personal. Zakir's approach to rhythm is deeply rooted in his understanding that music is not just about following patterns and structures. It's about expressing what words cannot. He once described tabla as a way of speaking without words, and it's through this language that he conveys the profound emotional currents that lie beneath the surface of his compositions. Whether performing in a quiet, intimate setting or a grand concert hall, Zakir's tabla is never just a rhythm, it's a conversation. His rhythms rise and fall like waves, expressing joy, sadness, excitement, and reflection in ways that transcend cultural and linguistic barriers. In his performances, Zakir taps into the centuries-old tradition of Indian classical music, where improvisation is a key element, but he goes further. He improvises not only on the technical elements of rhythm, but on the emotional landscape of the music. Each improvisation becomes a moment of emotional catharsis, a wave of expression, whether it's the joyful exuberance of a playful rhythm or the melancholy ebb of a slower, more contemplative piece. Zakir's tabla speaks to the soul. His ability to convey such profound emotions through his instrument is what has made him one of the most revered musicians of his generation. Audiences from around the world feel the pulse of his tabla, not just in their ears, but in their hearts. While Zakir's roots were firmly planted in the soil of Indian classical music, his music would take him far beyond its traditional borders. In the early 1970s, Zakir moved to the United States, a decision that would change not only the trajectory of his career, but also the world of music itself. The American music scene was, at that time, undergoing a cultural revolution, and it was an environment ripe for experimentation. Jazz, rock, and folk music were converging in new and exciting ways, and Zakir, with his mastery of rhythm, found himself drawn to these diverse genres. It was during this period in the United States that Zakir began collaborating with some of the most influential Western musicians. His first major collaboration came in 1971 when he worked with the legendary jazz fusion guitarist John McLaughlin. The two musicians, both of whom were deeply interested in expanding their musical horizons, formed the band Shakti. The fusion of Indian classical music with jazz and rock would come to define not only Shakti's sound, but also Zakir's approach to music itself. Shakti's groundbreaking music, a blend of Indian classical ragas with the improvisation of jazz, defied conventional musical categories. The group's compositions featured intricate tabla rhythms, droning sitars, and the high-flying guitar of McLaughlin, all combining to create a sound that was both new and deeply rooted in tradition. Shakti's albums, particularly Shakti in 1975 and a handful of Beauty in 1977, became landmarks in world music. They presented an entirely new way of thinking about Indian classical music, drawing connections between East and West and opening the door for a global audience to appreciate the beauty of tabla and raga. But Zakir's influence wasn't just confined to his work with Shakti. He soon became a sought-after collaborator for musicians from every corner of the globe. His collaborations with artists like George Harrison of the Beatles, Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead, and renowned jazz musicians like Herbie Hancock and Billy Cobham allowed Zakir to stretch the limits of the tabla, showcasing its versatility and capacity for innovation. In the decades that followed, Zakir Hussain's career flourished. He became a global ambassador for Indian classical music, performing in the world's most prestigious venues and collaborating with artists from a variety of musical traditions. His influence was profound, and he began to be recognized not only for his virtuosity, but also for his ability to bring a distinct, personal touch to every performance. His tabla was no longer confined to the classical stage. It was now a dynamic force in jazz, world music, and even film scores. Zakir's distinct sound was born from his ability to blend the ancient rhythms of Indian classical music with the more contemporary, experimental sounds of fusion. His tabla playing was virtuosic, yet always emotionally resonant. Whether he was performing in a grand concert hall or a small jazz club, Zakir's music communicated in a universal language that transcended borders and touched listeners on a deep, visceral level. His collaborations with Western musicians were revolutionary, but his work with fellow Indian classical musicians was equally groundbreaking. Zakir often worked with the legends of Hindustani classical music, including Pandit Ravi Shankar and Ustad Ali Akbar Khan. Together, they forged a new path for Indian classical music, elevating it to an international platform. Zakir Hussain's contributions to music go far beyond performance. As a composer, educator, and advocate for cultural exchange, Zakir has helped to shape the future of music in the 21st century. He is a true visionary, constantly pushing the boundaries of what is possible with the tabla, and finding new ways to bring people together through music. In the 1990s, Zakir founded the Zakir Hussain and Masters of Percussion Ensemble, a group that brought together some of the finest percussionists from around the world to perform traditional and contemporary music. Through this ensemble, Zakir continued to explore the rhythms of the world, finding commonalities between different musical traditions and creating a musical dialogue that celebrated the diversity of cultures. He has also become a prominent educator, committed to passing on his knowledge to future generations. Zakir's educational initiatives, including workshops and masterclasses around the world, have made him an important figure in the global music community. His commitment to teaching ensures that his legacy will continue for generations to come. Through the Shani India and Ravi Jazz projects, Zakir brought Indian music to new audiences, ensuring that the tabla would no longer be seen as an instrument relegated to the fringes of Western music, but as a central voice in the global musical dialogue. Zakir Hussain's contributions to music are unparalleled, but his impact extends beyond the world of music. His work has built bridges between cultures, and his music has become a powerful symbol of unity in a world often divided by differences. Through his performances, collaborations, and teachings, Zakir has shown that music, at its core, is a universal language, capable of transcending the divisions of geography, politics, and culture. As a cultural ambassador, Zakir's influence has been felt not just in the concert halls and recording studios, but also in the hearts and minds of millions of people across the globe. His music, his philosophy, and his vision have left an indelible mark on the world of music. His artistry continues to inspire new generations of musicians, proving that while the tabla may be an ancient instrument, its potential for innovation and expression is as limitless as Zakir Hussain's rhythms. In the grand narrative of world music, Zakir Hussain will forever be remembered as a true pioneer, a musician who did not simply play music, but reshaped it, creating a bridge between the East and West, between tradition and modernity. His legacy will endure, and his rhythms will continue to echo across the world, forever a reminder of the power of music to unite and inspire.